Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. So we're ready to proceed. If I could first of all go through what we class as our general housekeeping. To start with, fire exits. We've got two fire exits quite clearly marked on the left-hand side. There is another one in the corridor at the end of where the lavatories are, and also the entrance door where you came in. I've got no fire tests today, so if we hear the fire alarm go off, we will treat it as genuine and we will vacate the building and congregate in the car park. Okay, and if you're concerned as to where you're meant to be going, just follow this lot because they'll be at the door as quick as anything. They'll be well and truly gone. Next, mobile phones and various devices, could I ask you to switch them to silent? If you do decide that your telephone calls are more important than disturbing my meeting, and they do that, you will be fined £10 to the chairman's charity. And the chairman is also my vice chairman, but our chairman of the council, which is Councillor Wilson. And just tell us again your chosen charities. It takes me a whole year to remember them.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's the Swaffham and Litcham Home Hospice and Sands Baby Bereavement Society. All worthy causes, and they are used by Breckland residents. So
there we go.
If you leave your phones on, fantastic.
Yeah, leave your phones on if you want. We'll get some money out of you, and we won't worry about planning. We'll get round to it eventually. Procedure, as each item is raised, I have a list of speakers, which is not very big today, but anyway, we're going to go through procedural-wise. The case officer will do the presentation. I will then ask you to do your presentation, which is usually limited to 3 minutes. When that time is up, you will hear the bell. That means just sum up. Sum up is not another 15 minutes. Sum up is that sentence. And then we'll go over to members' questions, etc., and follow along before we take the vote. If I can do my introductions for the day, at the far end we've got Simon Wood, who is the head honcho. He's got a different title than that, but he's our main guy. We've got Mike Horn, who is our solicitor to the council. On my right-hand side, my right-hand woman is Rebecca Collins. We've got Naomi Minto. That's my fault. I always call her Minty, but it's Naomi Minto, who is one of our planning officers. We've got Chris Hobson at the back, and later on we will be joined by Matthew Blackie and Lucy Gaffer, but you'll be introduced to them as their items are raised. We've also got our usher for the day, one of our planning officers, which is Becky Burton, who was Becky Harris. We've covered that off. You're not getting another standing ovation. And down here, the most important person in the room who keeps us all together, makes sure everything goes right and takes the minutes and makes the tea and does whatever else we get her to do, is Julie Britton. Thank you. That's my team for today. So we're going to carry on now with our first item on the agenda is the minutes, and that's for the members to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of October 2023. Do I have your... Agreed? Thank you very much. Making funny nods there, Councillor Clark. I wasn't sure what that was. Okay, done. Let me sign them off. Don't try and copy that because we'll get you no money. There we go. Thank you, Julie. Okay, item 2. Julie, do we have apologies and substitutes, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we do have 3 apologies from Councillor Atterwell, Councillor Bambridge and Councillor Harvey. And in attendance today as substitutes are Councillor Land and Councillor Samantha Taylor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to Councillor Land and Taylor for coming in. That's very kind of you. Next item is item 3, declarations of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised. Item 4, Chairman's announcements. Yes, Christmas is around the corner. We can say the C word now. And it is 34 sleeps to Christmas. Hence the shirt today. So just to make you feel a little bit festive, You do need dark glasses today. My next item is we have got a panel tomorrow. Unfortunately, I can't attend. I have to be in Lincoln for a funeral. So Councillor Wilkinson's going to take the panel tomorrow, and we've got Councillor Kybird and Councillor Taylor who will be online for that one. Thanks. We also have a panel on the 18th of December, which is the day before our last meeting of 2023. I'm not sure whether we've got all members yet. Oh, we have. Okay, good. That's covered then. So thanks very much. That's all I need to say. Right, item 5, request to defer applications. Do we have? No, we don't. Okay. Number 6 on the agenda, urgent business. No urgent business. So number 7, local plan. And that's over to you, please, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just very briefly, members will have noticed that papers have been published for Cabinet next Monday, which is the 27th of November. They're seeking approval for a final Regulation 18 consultation around issues and options in relation to matters around the potential local development options, the methodology and evidence based on local service centres and settlement boundaries. It'll also give an example of the high-level site assessments that the team have been working on, and they will also be published at the same time as the consultation. It will be an 8-week consultation. We hope that it will kick off on the 11th of December. Ordinarily, it would be 6 weeks, but we're conscious that this is over the holiday period, so we've extended it accordingly, Chairman. We have a member workshop set for the 12th of December in the afternoon, and hopefully I will see many of you there. We're also working with the consultants, Filigree, around town and parish council workshops and other events to enable us to engage with the community, Chairman. I'll take any questions.
Any questions from members at all on that item? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wondering, Simon, the list, when people was asked to put land forward, you've deciphered a list to discuss, or we're still discussing everything that was thrown into the pot?
Essentially what we've done, Councillor Wilkinson, is we have gone through all the sites that were put forward and carried out a technical assessment of them. Are they in a flood risk area? Are they in open countryside, or are they within the urban area? Do they have other constraints around flooding, etc.? And we've done that high-level assessment. There'll be an example. There is an example attached to the papers. What it isn't doing, and I stress this, what it isn't doing is allocating any land. It isn't saying whether or not any land is going to be put forward for allocation. We want to get this consultation carried out to enable us to hear what people think about the way development should be placed within the district in terms of urban settlements, in terms of the rural settlements, local service centres, etc. And that will feed in then to those draft allocations. And we are looking at how we pick up with members and other relevant stakeholders around those individual towns, those individual service centres, to discuss those potential allocations.
Sorry, Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that update. With regard to your technical allocations, can I just check, will that be available to members, councillors, parishes, etc., at the stage when it becomes draft allocations, as opposed to being available, you know, once you've completed the technical allocations of all the sites?
There we go. What we're doing as part of the papers to Cabinet is providing an example of what they look like, and as part of that consultation exercise, all those high-level assessments will be published on Commonplace, and people will be perfectly entitled to give a view on those if they wish to do so, and we will have regard to that.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our next item, which is item I, which is a report from about monitoring fees. Over to you again, please, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This report is for information and relates to a decision by the Executive Member for Finance to impose monitoring charges at the level set out in the recommendation. It's been possible to impose monitoring charges on Section 106 and unilateral undertakings since 2019. We've chosen not to do so, except in exceptional circumstances where the obligation has been especially complicated. But given that we're now dealing with a significant uplift in the number of unilateral undertakings, particularly in relation to GRAMs, and that we'll also be having a significant number of Section 106s eventually in relation to nutrient neutrality, it's considered necessary to charge for the additional burden that these will impose. The facility to have bespoke monitoring fees on more complicated applications remains. The fees imposed need to recover reasonable costs in relation to the monitoring process, so it's not something that can be a profit-making enterprise. It has to be a cost recovery basis, but it is there to support the 106 monitoring process, and the fees go to the council. The report was endorsed by the Deputy Chief Executive and signed off by the Executive Member earlier this year, Chairman. Thank you.
Any questions at all? Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. For clarification on the GRAMS fee, there's already a fee payable when you agree to enter into a GRAMS payment. Will there be a further fee as well as the actual payment?
Yes, so what the paper allows for and what has been agreed is, in addition to the actual GRAMS obligation fee, which I think is about £210, something like that at the moment, there will be an additional monitoring fee of £75 and an administrative fee as well on top of that. So there's a fee for administering the undertaking and a fee for monitoring as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 9. Again to Simon for an infrastructure report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an annual report that the Council is required by regulation to produce and to publish at the end of each calendar year relating to the previous financial year. We do this in time and we do it thoroughly, and that's a lot of credit for that goes to the Section 106 monitoring officer, who most of you know. It provides a summary of all financial and non-financial developer contributions relating to Section 106 agreements entered into by the Council for infrastructure within Breckland District. It does only set out obligations that are provided to the District Council or administered by the District Council, or counter-council obligations such as education, libraries, etc. are set out in their own statement, which is published on the counter-council website. The headlines within this are that in the financial year 2022-23, we completed 146 affordable housing units. 8 play areas were created. Over £1.5 million was allocated to provide infrastructure such as open space, improvements to play areas, contributions towards Waylands Wood at Watton, Reetham Village Hall, and as well contributions to the NHS. Over £400,000 was spent on projects such as the Queen's Mother's Garden, the 3G artificial pitch in Attleborough, and Elm House. The Council currently holds over £2.8 million in relation to Section 106 infrastructure requirements. It has also, with reference to the previous item, received over £6,000 in monitoring fees. This item is for noting and will be published in the next few weeks on the relevant pages of the Council's website. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. No questions on that item. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10 is our deferred applications. We have none of those being raised at the moment. Some of those are set to have some works done on them. So we move to item 11 on the agenda, which is our schedule of planning applications, and we're going to start, as the list shows, at item A at Thetford, land to the rear of 2125 Guildhall Street, application 3PL 2023-0475. That's a full application. We've got Councillor Annie Blackburn who wishes to speak. Should we leave her there or bring her around?
I don't think she's got a tow room.
Oh, you haven't got a total room. I'm afraid you're going to have to come over to here. Sorry. Yes, I believe some of you have. I'm glad you had the time to read it.
The one we've been aware of has been summarised in the supplementary.
Yeah.
And we said we'll go around that.
Yeah, there has been an email response to you all, and it should have been in your supplementary. I hope you've read. Okay, over to you, please, Naomi.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks full planning permission for a residential development comprising 4 number 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in a single block across 2 floor levels. The location is within Thetford. It's within the settlement boundary. The access would be via the existing access of Pike Lane to the east of the site. This is the site and wider context. As you can see, it is surrounded by built development with the Pike Lane car park to the east. It's currently an unkept parking area which is accessed via Park Lane, and it's surrounded by car parking areas and buildings, including a Grade 2 listed buildings located to the north of the site. It's also within a designated conservation area. So this is the site in relation to the settlement boundary. As you can see, it's well within it. And this is the proposed site plan. You can see an aerial view of it there with some rear amenity space and walkway through to the rear drying areas and amenity space for the properties on Guildhall Street. So these are the proposed floor plans. These are revised plans. This plan was actually received at the end of last week, and it includes a security gate there from the main pedestrian access point of Pike Lane. And these are the proposed elevations. The building has been reduced to a 2-storey building. Originally, they had proposed accommodation across 3 levels into the roof space with the use of dormers and roof lights, and the council considered that it would not integrate to a high degree of compatibility with the adjacent properties and in the context of the conservation area. So the applicant has submitted these revised plans which bring it more into line with the adjacent building. So these are some site photos looking west across the site to the properties which are at the rear. Those properties front onto Guildhall Street. This is the adjacent building to the development site. This has planning permission to be converted into multiple residential units. Currently it's used as one. And this is looking south along Pike Lane. And this is Pike Lane car park opposite the site. And looking southwest across the site, you can see it's completely surrounded by built form. And this is looking south across the site, northwest to the properties to the rear, northeast across the site, and back to the location plan. So in terms of consultation responses, Thetford Town Council object to the proposal on the basis they considered it to be overdevelopment and not in keeping with the surrounding characteristics of the conservation area. and there were various other reasons that they raised concerns which are within the officer report. Following receipt of revised plans, the Historic Buildings Officer raised no objection to the proposal. Contaminated Land Officer has raised no objection to the proposal subject to conditions. Norfolk County Council Highways raised no objection to proposal subject to conditions. They have included, although there's no parking provision for these apartments, they have provided safe cycle storage facilities, and it's considered that given its location central to Thetford, it can be built without parking provision, but there is also the availability of the car park opposite if required, which is a public car park. Historic England have raised no objection having regard to the heritage aspects of the site and surrounding area. Environmental health officers have raised no objection. Historic Environment Service have raised no objection subject to condition, and Natural England have raised no objection subject to condition. There have been multiple objections from local residents to the proposal. The council received 42 letters in total, raising various points of concern, which are summarised in the officer report. In terms of the principle of the development, it's considered to be sustainable because it's in the settlement boundary of Thetford and therefore compliant with policies House 6, Gen 3 and Gen 5 of the Breckland local plan. In terms of the design, I've already gone over this. The applicant initially proposed to construct a 2.5-storey building with 6 apartments spread over 3 levels. However, as the application has progressed, they have reduced the height of the building and reduced the number of dwellings down to 4 across 2 levels. They had also, during the application process, proposed an extension to the rear of the property, which they've now reduced that and taken that off, as it was considered that it would lead to amenity concerns. Overall, the revised plans are considered to be compliant with Policy Com 1 and Policy Gen 2 and Policy ENV of the Breckland local plan, having regard to those heritage aspects. And following receipt of revised plans, the Historic Buildings Officer raised no objection to the proposal on heritage grounds. In terms of the amenity impact, obviously, as I've said before, the proposal has evolved over the course of the application process. The design has been changed to address amenity concerns, and it is now considered to be compliant with Policy Com 3 of the Breckland local plan, subject to conditions. In terms of highways, I've already said highways have raised no objection to it, subject to conditions. And having regard to ecology, the site is located within a special protection area, Stone Curlew buffer zone, and a 1,500-metre primary buffer zone. We didn't receive any ecology information or habitats regulations assessment. However, Policy EMV 03 also states that it states that in the circumstances where the proposal is able to conclusively demonstrate that it will not result in an adverse effect on the Breckland SPA, is where a proposal is a new building that will be completely masked from the SPA by existing built development, which this is. So we didn't feel in this regard that habitats regulation assessment would be required. However, conditions are recommended to deal with net gains. And in terms of GI-RAMs, the applicant has paid the administration and monitoring fee, and they have submitted a signed unilateral undertaking to deal with that aspect. So overall, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Since the officer report was written, we did receive a further letter, which I understand has been sent to some councillors as well. And this was considered in a supplementary, which everyone should have received. Whilst the objectors' comments have been noted, we have thoroughly assessed this in line with planning policy and consider it to be compliant, and therefore it remains recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blackburn, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that the applicant has revised plans to accommodate objections made regarding overdevelopment in the area and the design of the intended dwelling. The amendments would mean that rather than 6 residents being accommodated in 6 flats, the 4 flats could accommodate up to 11 people, increasing the overcrowding. I represent local people who live in the vicinity, very many of whom have written to Breckland Planning Committee to express their concerns. At present, these concerns centre on the dwelling currently owned by the applicant, which is adjacent to the area proposed for the new development. And these local people believe that the new development will increase the current problems. At present, local residents and visitors to the area, many who use the opposite public car park, experience antisocial behaviour and intimidation from residents of this dwelling, and generally do not want to make objections known in person as they fear reprisals. On the site, rubbish and fly tipping is a real problem. Once this site is built on, residents are concerned that this behaviour will just move to adjacent sites or moved onto the road. Residents inform me that currently that littering on the site by tenants and the property owners is currently being investigated by Breckland District Council. Rubbish is still piled up on the site, although the landlord had until the 19th of November to clear it, but he hasn't complied. The antisocial behaviour is being investigated and monitored by both Breckland District Council and the police. Concerns are around drug dealing and drug taking on the premises, loud music on the site, and occupants driving cars in and out while under the influence of alcohol and drugs. With this area being reduced with the building of the proposed dwelling, tenants in Guildhall Street are concerned that this will bring antisocial behaviour closer to their residents, or that it will continue in areas around the new dwelling. The amenity area is back. I appreciate there's a gate, a security gate, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to stop people coming and going in that area. Residents frequently have called the police with their concerns regarding the antisocial behaviour in the area. At times, the police and fire brigade have attended when fires have been lit, putting a strain on local resources and raising real concerns for the local residents. Concerns are that as the current dwelling is not being adequately maintained, the new dwelling will also not be monitored by the landlord, and subsequently the difficulties experienced by local residents will increase. Granting this application will increase the problems in this area, which already has more than its fair share of difficulties, and increase overcrowding.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's open to questions from members. Councillor Kybird, then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to just read out policy TH2, giving priority to pedestrian and cycling permeability. Says across the town centre, car parking provision will be provided in a way which seeks to increase the relative proportion of short stay spaces and provide these in concentrated, specific, centralised locations which result in positive changes to the movement of town centre visitors on foot. Guiding principle F of that policy said we should protect residents' quality of life and create new living environments of lasting quality. And paragraph 8.7 of the Secretary Action Plan states that with regard to parking, demand currently approximates to capacity on weekdays and exceeds capacity at weekends. I therefore don't see the highways comment, there's a car park nearby. This will merely add to an already overstretched asset within the town. And I'd like to go on to a planning decision issued last month, 3PL 2023-0824F, which is for a site just the other 100 yards from this site, also on Pike Lane. This was for 3 dwellings, which included 6 parking spaces and individual amenity spaces. This was refused, one, for the poor standard of amenity space and increased perception of overlooking of adjoining neighbours, contrary to COM 1, Gen 2, COM 3, as well as having regard to Para 134 of the MPPF. And despite having 2 parking spaces per dwelling, a reason for refusal was insufficient parking spaces provided to accommodate off-street parking, adverse impact on highway safety, contrary to TR01 and TR02, and also insufficient info in respect of ecological implications, which we've said in the report we've just received, isn't taken into account. So that there's a lot of inconsistency there in the way the planning department has dealt with these 2 applications.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions for our Officer Naomi Minto and Councillor Blackburn. If I can just start off with the ward representative, so I don't know the area. In terms of the site at the moment, having seen the pictures, is that used as a general sort of parking area for residents around there?
It's used for parking for the residents next door, so there's cars in there. It is also at the moment, there's a lot of fly tipping and piles of rubbish in there, so it is quite an eyesore. But yeah, the residents of the next adjacent building park in that area, which would mean they would then increase their parking either on the street, it's quite a narrow road, or in the adjacent car park. And then another probably 6 cars would also go in there, which would decrease the amount of parking available. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Question for our officer. Just can you confirm that, I've read the supplementary as well, that in terms of the materials to be used, that obviously you're happy with the materials to be used, that it would fit in with the character of the area, and that the historic building officer hasn't raised any concerns about the materials to be used. And the second part of the question, thinking of the ward representatives' comments and others, is has there been any, obviously maybe not for the small size of development, has there been any comments sought from, the sort of crime reduction officers, on this particular application? Thank you.
Okay, so in respect of the crime prevention, we've had no comments in that regard. In respect of the materials question, the Historic Buildings Officer at the Council was consulted as part of the application, and he did initially have concerns with some of the development. So initially they had proposed dormer windows to the front of the building, which wasn't in accordance with the existing character and appearance. So he wanted those removed. They also had roof lights to the rear, which potentially added to the issues because that wasn't on the adjacent building either. The roof style was different. Initially they'd had it's sloping with a flat aspect so they could have solar panels on, but he wanted it, I can't think of the word, but he wanted it like that. So they have reduced the height. They have taken on board his comments in respect of the use of the materials and the design. So it should reflect the building, which I showed you in the photos, obviously a newer version of it. But it has very similar design characteristics to that adjacent building.
Coming back, Councillor Clark. Naomi, you're still on.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. So either in terms of the application or in terms of the conditions, can we be clear that if this was approved, the applicant will be held to what's on the application form in terms of not just design, but also, you know, the materials and outward appearance. So I have read down through the conditions, but we'd like that reassurance. Thank you.
Okay, I think you'll find that's duly noted. Anyone else wish? I've got Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Brindle, please.
Yeah, my question was just, obviously it says here that the development would have to have or to provide adequate parking. If it wasn't for the public car park around the corner, would it still be considered to have adequate parking? Just because I'm quite mindful that in Attleborough, obviously, our public car parks have changed. Obviously, now they've got time restrictions coming in, and a lot of the residents that especially live near Queen Square and Edenside have actually, there's been a bit of pushback that actually they rely on that car park, and the feedback that was given by Breckland Council was that actually they aren't residential car parks. They are to support the high street, they're for the footfall, they're for the business support. So it's kind of like, find somewhere else to park because that's not our problem. So I just fear that if something similar was to happen in Thetford, there wouldn't be the adequate parking to support this development.
Hi. So, given that question, there's an overriding assumption there that there will be a need for the car parking in the first place, and the point of designing development in town centre locations is you design out the need for car parking. So it's not that we're assuming that people will park in public car parks, we're designing out the need for a car in the first place, and that is supported by multiple policies in the local plan and the Thetford Area Action Plan. So policy TR01 seeks to promote sustainable transport and travel, and it seeks to reduce reliance on the private car. That's reflected in policy TH04 of the Thetford Area Action Plan, and policy TR02 of the local plan sets out to you members where your parking standards are for individual dwellings, and it is very, very clear both in the appendix, which sets out the parking standards, and in the policy that they are A, maximum standards, and B, that they should be reduced in town centre locations. So we are actually following the local plan and the text within the local plan in terms of promoting a modal shift and reducing reliance on the private car. And if you are to do that, members, your town centre locations are the locations to do that. So I think, you know, there isn't a presumption of where are these cars going to go. The presumption is designing out the need for a private car in the first instance, and that's what your policies encourage you to do. There was a few other points. Shall I carry on?
Please do.
So there was reference to a previous application that was for 3 dwellings. These are obviously for 4 very small flats. So there is a difference in the scale of development there in terms of what we're looking at in terms of the development. Also that development, there wasn't the details of those 3 dwellings, whereas we've got the details of the flats to know that they are very small flats. There was mention of the car parking policy, TH2, in the Thetford Area Action Plan. The first part of that policy quoted is all to do with retail and shopping. The second part of that policy is all development in town centre locations, which again reiterates the need for sustainable travel and to encourage a modal shift. So yes, we are encouraging car parking to support retail, but you're considering a housing development here. So we would say that your appropriate policy is TH4, not TH2, because that's a retail-led policy. With regards to consulting the crime prevention officer, we only do that on major applications as requested by the police. With regards to the site in general, we've heard lots today about fly tipping, antisocial behaviour, etc., etc. In designing out crime principles, which is what the police would advise us on in their input into planning applications, it's very much about increasing surveillance in local areas, increasing usage throughout multiple hours of the night and day. So that would support having residential, having windows on streets, and just by putting development in this location, you would by default remove the area for the fly tipping and that gathering of people, and therefore, in my view, and in terms of designing out crime principles, there would only be a benefit to developing this site in the way that's proposed in terms of reducing any antisocial behaviour or police activity in this location. In terms of the materials and details, that was the other point I wanted to pick up. I was also raised that when I read the committee reports early, and we've added a sentence to conditions 2 and 3 to make sure the detailing in itself is delivered on the elevations, as well as development being undertaken in accordance with the approved plans. So yes, Councillor, that was something I picked up as well. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Brindle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to pick up on, if I may, firstly on that last item. You spoke very eloquently there about designing out cars. I think you've bitten off an awful big one there. It's wishful thinking, I'm sorry to say. If you drive around Thetford, there are more cars than ever, and the need for car parks is absolutely critical. I find it wholly disappointing that we would be thinking of putting housing in the centre of a town and saying, if you live in the centre of a town, you don't need a car. The assumption being that there are also jobs in the centre of the town, which there are not. And I don't see any plans brought forward by Breckland to produce more jobs in the centre of the town. The truth is that the people who live in those houses will have cars so that they can go out of Thetford to work. That's the sad reality that so many people, if you look at the roads of Thetford at rush hour, which I often do, you will find enormous transport as people return to Thetford in the evening and leave Thetford in the morning to go to Bury St Edmunds, to go to Cambridge, to go to Norwich, to go to the direction of King's Lynn. There is absolutely no evidence whatever that we are being successful in this attempt to design out the need for cars. So what we're doing here is not only are we saying, oh, isn't it convenient there's a public car park across the way, which there is, so we'll deprive the public who have a legitimate reason for driving into Thetford, i.e. to go shopping, from the chance of using that by putting in whatever number, 4, 6, 8 cars that these buildings will produce. But we're also preventing people parking on what is currently rather a waste space, I accept that. So we're actually reducing the car parking solution at both ends, so to speak. So I have a great concern about, that's the first thing, about parking. The others will be more brief, I think. The second thing is, I think you said there were 42, I nearly said complaints, objections. At what point do we say the public are making it clear, the public of Thetford are making it clear that they don't want this development, but we will ignore that? I mean, at what point is there any point in them complaining, if indeed that number can complain and we still say, let's go ahead anyway? So that's the second concern, that the public seem to be politely, carefully, but nonetheless brushed off. And the final of my 3 comments is, I think you said that the new development will have security gates. Is that right? Okay. Doesn't that say it all? They need security gates because they're not expecting that the kind of antisocial behaviour which exists now will stop. That's what I read into that. Why would you go to the extra expense of putting in security gates if you don't think they're needed? And by the way, who wants to live in a town where people are gated off from one another? I think that's an appalling concept, and that on its own would, to me, justify turning this down. But please, can we look at what the people want, whether we're stopping antisocial behaviour and whether we really can afford to say we're designing cars out, because it's a long haul designing cars out, and at the moment we're making the situation worse. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to hand over to Rebecca to answer that, but the situation with regards to the security gate, that was actually raised by myself, because I felt the design of the alleyway type system, which goes, you go down the alleyway and you've got the various doors to go to the various apartments. I just felt it was far too easy to have loitering, toiletry requirements unnecessary. Whereas if the design had been built with an entrance door, which could even be nicer if you wish, an entrance door that you go into a hallway, which would be like any blocks of flats or apartments that I would expect. And it was just for, in all fairness, the convenience of the people who will be living there. So that was my directive. I didn't see it as a case that it's a bad area and we need to protect people. And I think as far as a town, and all towns have their various problems, I don't think we're going to move the problem about, because I don't think it's there. I think it's all over the place, and we can't just hone it down to one position. I felt that the design needed some extra attention. So I raised that particular one, but I'm going to hand over to Rebecca, who's got answers to some of your other questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. So with regards to the displacement of car parking, that is a private piece of land, and therefore it could be fenced off at any time without the need for consent, and that would prevent any parking on that area. And also that we've heard that the space is used in an unacceptable way with fly tipping, and therefore is not always available for that use. But the point is, it's a private area of land. It's not a public car park. It's not a requirement to be used as a car park. And therefore it could be fenced off and those cars will be displaced anyway. I think, you know, there were some really interesting points in there, Councillor Brindle, about how we use spaces, and if we own cars, then we're getting in those cars and travelling out and travelling to different places. And often in town centre locations, a lot of design policies like the addition of residential properties, because it gives you that natural rotation between the day into the evening. So what tends to happen is shoppers come in the day and use the shops in the daylight hours, and then the residents come in the evening. So you get that natural rotation, which provides surveillance to the general area, as well as provides a rotation for the car parking. And that is a common consideration when we're designing residential dwellings into town centre locations such as this. And it would be one that we'd expect to happen in this location in the event there were cars there. But I do get the point that, you know, a lot of people do have cars, but some people don't have cars. And, you know, coming back to listening to objections, of course, we listen to all objections received. They're reported in the officer report. Their comments are commented across in the officer report. But members, I do need to remind you that we determine applications in accordance with adopted planning policies, not in accordance with how many or how few objections or letters we receive in support or objecting to a planning application. In your officer report, obviously the officers have set out for you what they consider to be the relevant policies that you need to determine the application against, and obviously any other material considerations. Obviously you can rebalance those policies and look at other matters and take a different view in terms of weighting in the decision, but it would be wrong to determine an application in accordance with how many or how few objections we receive to an application. And therefore, when you're considering the application, I would consider the policies in front of you, the text within them, and how you view them in light of this application. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Land, please. I have got.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I note with interest the fact that car use is designed out of town centre dwellings, which sort of begs the question: what alternative things have been put in place to design in transport? And looking at the plans, I might be wrong, but I don't see any accommodation for push bikes, for motorbikes, either inside or outside the dwellings. So that seems a bit of a false assumption. That's the only point I've got.
So the floor plans that I shared with you in the presentation shows provision of bicycle storage to the rear. It's a ground level and it would be accessed through that alleyway, which is a restricted access. And that will provide bicycle storage for all of those apartments so that they've got a form of transport.
All of them, I think Annie was saying, how many residents are proposed in the...
11.
11, that was my impression. That seems a lot of push bikes.
I think the assumption of 11 is, you know, inappropriate. It is for 4 flats, and therefore, you know, it would be inappropriate to say those flats were all occupied at maximum capacity. But yeah, if you want to look at it, but it would be wrong to say that this application is for 11 residents. And again, members, Appendix 2 of your local plan, your adopted local plan, sets out your cycle parking standards, which the application complies with, and one cycle parking space per unit. Yes.
Sorry, yes, but also just to say the cycle units, they haven't been specific. They've shown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They've shown 6 bicycle spaces there for the 4 apartments, but there is also externally access storage for 2 of those apartments, which could potentially store bikes in for those as well. And I don't know whether you've seen some storage cycles in apartments before, but quite often they double them. So you have one on a lower level and then one on a raised platform. So there should be sufficient space to provide sufficient biking for those apartments.
It does feel that we're stretching here a bit, doesn't it? I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kybird, please.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Can we just see that gate detail again, please? And as regards the rotation argument on parking spaces, that of course fails miserably when the shift workers are involved.
So this is the cycle storage area here, and this is a limited access security gate there to the front of the building. And then there's these storage areas here, which are accessed, which could potentially, this one in particular, I'm not sure about this one, but this one in particular would be able to fit a bike in it.
Coming back?
Need to do it in
Oh, you're still on.
Sorry.
The gate, as shown, would have to be outward opening for fire safety concerns. So the plan, as shown, should not be built. Thank you.
Okay, we can condition that with regards to fire safety. It's a good point, well raised. Okay, any further questions at all, members? You're all okay with that? Thank you. No summing up? No, you're fine. Terrific. Okay. So on this item for Thetford, 3PL 2023-0475, this is a full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? 6, and those against? 4. Okay. Okay, thank you. This item is approved. Thank you very much. Oh, I think that had quite a good exercise, that one did. Okay, we're going to just take, before we have a coffee break, we're just going to take the next item, 9B, at Necton, and that's a presentation from Simon, please.
The words are from me. Rebecca's going to move the PowerPoint, so this could go horribly wrong. So, in terms of me not coordinating properly. So if we just get to a location plan, because you'll all have seen this before, hopefully. The application seeks an extension to the eastern end of the existing Necton 400 kV substation in order to ensure that the network remains resilient with the increase in power generation within the area. And those of you that know the area will know that this is fairly close to where the Vattenfall, Vanguard and potentially Boreas developments will take place as well. And you'll all be aware that there is access work taking place on the A47 to try and facilitate that. Committee resolved to approve the application in February this year. That was subject to the signing of a Section 106 agreement to secure the provision of biodiversity net gain and the conditions set out in the officer's report. That report is attached for your information there. I'll come on to the conditions in a minute. The application's back before committee because the proposed supplier for the BNG credits is not yet able to fully commit to provision of BNG units until the regulations are published to provide guidance later this year. We're hoping that those regulations will be out in the next week or two, but we've been hoping that for some months now, so I'm not going to hold my breath. This means that until we've resolved this issue, National Grid were unable to commence work. So following discussions with ours and the applicant's legal advisors, we've agreed a pre-commencement condition to provide a 15% uplift in biodiversity, and the detail of that is set out at condition 8 in your report, members. There's also an additional condition, condition 2, proposed, which requires the applicant to submit notice of commencement to trigger condition 8. It's also proposed to remove the original condition 6. This required the applicant to submit a scheme to monitor compliance with the conditions that set acceptable noise levels. Those conditions setting noise levels are to remain. The applicant has, however, advised that no active plant equipment is being installed. This has been discussed with the Environmental Health Officer, and they are of the view that given that no noise generating equipment is proposed, and the noise monitoring that has been carried out demonstrates that those noise levels were comfortably below the levels for the Necton substation, which was subject to the development order consent. They are in agreement, subject to retaining the conditions specifying what those levels will be. On that basis, the application is recommended for approval, subject to an updated list of conditions shown at the end of the report. Delegation is also sought to officers to agree any further amendments to the scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
It's open to questions from members. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Green. Thank you, Chairman. I note the Parish Council's objection to this application centres mainly on the fact that Breckland Council were directed to do an independent design review of the Boreas and Vanguard substations, and that their opinion was that it applied also to this particular substation. I have a letter. There's a letter in the papers from National Grid that said it didn't. So can you confirm that the objections from the Parish Council have been largely overcome by the fact that National Grid don't consider, because this substation was approved by not DCO but by Breckland Council, that this substation is not part of the independent design review that we're currently undertaking for the other substations being put in by the DCO.
I can confirm that, Councillor. This is completely divorced from that.
Okay, any further questions? No. Terrific. Thanks very much. With regards to this item, at Necton, 3PL 2022-1003, and that's in the full format. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. That's approved. It's virtually 11 o'clock. We're going to take just a 10 and a bit minutes break to get a coffee and various other things you need to do, and then we will come back and go to Geist. Will be our next item that we will raise. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Welcome back. We're going to move, as I said before, 9C at Geist. And we have, I hope they're sitting there, Debbie Sherman and Joshua Pitcher and someone else. Okay, that's terrific. As long as you know you're in the right position to speak. Well, you're not speaking anyway, are you? No. Okay. So we're going to hand it over to Chris Hobson, please, to do the presentation.
Sorry, Chairman. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. So in the morning. So item 11C in Geist and Twyford. So this application here before you is full consent for the creation of an ICW, integrated constructed wetland. This will be useful. We've got a few images to go through. So we'll just kind of talk through kind of what the proposal is really before going into detail. Obviously, members are aware of the nutrient neutrality guidance that Natural England issued in March 2022, which had impact on ourselves in terms of certain types of development. So this kind of ICW, just to shorten that, is kind of a response to that. We have the applicants here today, Persimmon. The proposals are being proposed by themselves to mitigate for the kind of impacts that guidance has had on house building in particular. So just talk through kind of the presentation a bit more. As I said, so we're in Geist and Twyford. So you saw from that first image the sites between the villages of Geist and Twyford. Geist up here, we've got Twyford Hall just to the northeast as well. Generally rural area, tranquil in terms of character generally. You can see from the context there, open countryside. We have the Senell Park kind of northwest. And we can kind of just make out kind of the Wensum kind of meandering down here to the west of the site. And you'll see the site edge red here. So it sits within the valley kind of floor and is fed by the Fowsham tributary. Just move through the slides again. A bit more kind of focus on the site, so we can just about make out where that kind of drain currently runs through the site. So it flows from east to west, so the Wensum again beyond here. And we can see the Norwich-Fakenham Road here, the A1067. So proposals would access from there and obviously head down here between the woodland using existing access. In terms of kind of some aspects of the proposals and how it relates to the River Wensum here, so we can see it to the west. So the flow through the site, the Fowsham tributary here. So we can kind of see the site here. It's already been subject to kind of drainage channels and ditches. So again, this is where the watercourse runs east to west. And again, kind of some of the other key aspects you'll see from the report relates to the River Wensum SAC, so the Special Area of Conservation. So we've got that running all the way along the Wensum, so along here and through here, but also just within this area here is the triple SI, and you can see the site abuts on the western edge here. More detail on that in a moment. So just in terms of the A1067, so that's, we can make out the site access there on the right-hand side of the image. So that's looking south. So we've got the existing access, field access points to the two adjacent fields. Bear with me. There we go. You can see the view northwards. So there's the other field access and the access track. On the left-hand side, you can get an idea of the open field and character of the area. Apologies. So that's the view down towards the site for the proposed ICW, so along the access track. So we'll go on to a slide in a moment, but there'll be works to improve that during the construction period. And again, that's the view back north up the access track towards the Norwich-Fakenham Road. And that's the site of the ICW itself. So it's split into 3 cells, which I'll show you in a moment, but that's one side of the site. View south, so you get an idea of what the kind of area is like in terms of present, in terms of we've got field about boundaries, got mature trees, hedgerows. Again, that's the view towards Geist. Again, that kind of similar there as well. Mature trees we can make out on the northern part of the site. So again, that's the view towards Geist again. Those mature trees again, so helpful screening from the A1067. And then that's the kind of eastern half of the site, view towards Twyford, so you get the kind of feel of the area, how we've got mature hedgerows and trees along the edges, and the view southwards as well. So quite a contained site in terms of landscape, views, etc. Again, that's the corresponding view from the first pond back eastwards. So kind of touching on the proposals, so the proposals in total are about 3.38 hectares in area in terms of the ponds and ICW. So there's essentially 3 cells or 3 ponds throughout the site. So essentially what they're doing is, by way of a leaky dam, which I'll show you in more detail on this slide, a leaky dam up here. Obviously the tributary runs from the east here through a leaky dam here, and then an inlet created here. It will divert water flows into the ponds here. Then we've got pipes essentially connecting the 3 ponds together. Say some here, between 2 and 3, and 1 here. And then just in here, that section is an example, just showing how those areas are created. So what it's proposing essentially to do is a surface kind of flow approach, which with the planting and vegetation on the shallow areas here, that will essentially remove nutrients as it flows across here. And as I say, it will flow through the 3 ponds here, and then there'll be a discharge point here into the watercourse at this end here at the western end. So yeah, so you'll see obviously inlet here, outlet here, and it will continue again down here to the east into the Wensum. Just more detail here in terms of pond 3. So again, the same kind of approach in terms of shallow areas make up the majority of the area. We've got planting around the edges and aquatic planting in these areas here, shown by the lighter blue. I mentioned the leaky dam and weir, so these are some examples here. So what the design will do, it's timber logs attached via wire, so it will inevitably mean that there'll be some leak from it. And in high level flows, water will top over that into the existing watercourse channel. And there's some proposals there in terms of planting and landscaping. So improvements within the rest of the Red Edge site across here, obviously, as well as the wetland habitats via the 3 ponds as well. So, and there's some more detail of the planting here. So particularly along these shallow areas here and the edges. In terms of access, I mentioned the access, so obviously provides access to the meadows here at the moment along the access track, but also access to the 2 fields here, so cropped, I think, and grazing on this side. So obviously we'll need improvement, so that's showing a temporary construction access here. And yeah, I'll move on to more detail on that in a moment. So you'll see from the report, we've got, I see a number of matters to go through, but in terms of the comments from the public, we haven't received any objections or comments with regards to the application. We haven't received comments from the Geist Parish Council or Twyford Parish Council in that regard either. So in terms of the kind of main issues. We touched on the ecology, nature conservation aspects of it briefly in terms of why it's coming forward. As I say, the main objective is to provide enhancements in terms of the water quality of the Wensum. As I said, that sits immediately to the west of the site, and that reflects the Natural England guidance from last year. So at the minute, the Wensum SAC is subject to phosphorus, high levels of phosphorus, and the proposals themselves would remove approximately 41.39 kilograms a year from the Wensum SAC itself. And obviously the proposals mitigating the issues at the moment in terms of water quality, but as you'll see from the RSPB comments, they praise the kind of approach and the project in general. But as I say, this proposal is going to be needed alongside various other issues, schemes to improve and bring back the SAC to the required status and level of water quality. Turning to kind of some of the issues and potential impacts, mentioned the kind of proximity to the Wensum Special Area of Conservation and the triple SI earlier. So you'll see from the report, we've consulted Natural England and our ecologist. The application's been supported by Shadow HRA, supporting reports in terms of impacts on ecology in that regard. So in terms of the potential issues on the triple SI and the SAC within there, the impacts on those species which it is designated of importance for aren't considered to be adversely impacted. Those majority of species aren't present or found to be present on the site from surveys, and the impacts in terms of changes to the water course aren't considered to impact on those remaining species, the bullhead or the brook lamprey, due to them being able to tolerate shallow streams, water depths, etc. So we've recommended conditions, condition 6, with respect to construction management plan. So a lot of the impacts clearly will be in the construction period, and obviously in conditions 3 and 5, 5 proposed to ensure landscape the sites managed in ongoing after completion of the ICW. Other impacts in terms of protected species, you'll see a licence is required for water voles. So that's will be a condition, including condition 4, requiring or ensuring no works to commence or other than in accordance with the licence from Natural England. You'll also see from the supplementary and additional conditions being requested by our ecologist in terms of reptiles. In terms of other wildlife, flora and fauna, you'll see that we've considered issues of breeding birds, lizards, etc. You'll see from the ecologists that they raise no objections to the proposals. They're happy with the condition, the measures that have been set out and recommended in the reports prepared by the applicants. In terms of net gain, you'll see in the latest comments that there's still kind of some aspects of what actual level of habitats are there on site at the minute. So they've requested a condition that still allows for consideration of the values of existing, the creation of a enhancement scheme. In terms of the comments, you'll see the ecologists raised no objections. Natural England have since the report yesterday confirmed that in principle they agree with the proposals set out. So we don't have the formal comments in writing, but we do have their overarching views on the scheme. And what we would do and is proposing is to complete the appropriate assessment that's required. Once we have those formal comments in writing, there may be the need to slightly adjust conditions in that regard. in terms of the final comments from Natural England, but as I say, they raised no objections. Obviously, there's considerations of flood risk and drainage. Obviously, being in the floodplain, kind of flood meadows, the site does sit with a range of flood zones 1 to 3. They have submitted a flood risk assessment, which the Environment Agency reviewed and agree with in terms of the proposals and the impacts. So, given obviously the creation of this flood storage here, given the design of the inlet, those proposals wouldn't have an adverse impact on flood risk elsewhere. The proposals are considered to be a flood compatible form of development, and noting the sequential tests with regards to schemes like this, obviously it is required to, works are required to the flood zones within the immediate around the watercourse itself, so the proposals are considered to comply with the sequential test in that regard. In terms of the comments, you'll see comments from the IDB, the Internal Drainage Board. There are notes attached to the consent that would highlight the need to obtain consent from them. Obviously, the purpose of planning is not to duplicate existing and separate regimes in that regard. So you'll also see there's no objection from the lead local flood authority in terms of surface water flood risk. Obviously, in terms of landscape, moving on to that, we'll see it's an open area. Obviously, does, as shown on the images, sit within a contained area in the flood, kind of lower level flood valley. So that actually, in terms of landscape, once you take into account that the construction period of approximately 3 months, after that, the natural kind of planting becomes established, the impacts and the kind of scar is temporary in that regard. So as you'll see from the report, once that has been allowed to complete and naturalise, the impacts are considered to be acceptable and obviously accord with some of the kind of schemes, areas you'll see along the Wensum, where we have a number of similar wetland kind of ponds and areas. In terms of amenity, as seen from the images, we're approximately, nearest house and property is about 300 metres due east. The village of Geist, again, is more like 500, 800 metres in terms of nearest houses. So in that regard, there's not considered to be any adverse impacts on amenity. In terms of transport, obviously you'll see from the report that there will be obviously a cut and fill exercise, and that does amount to a significant amount of material that needs to be removed because of the ecological sensitivities of the site. It's not appropriate to have that kind of left and deposited on site, so there will need to be HGVs moving the earth from the site. So that you'll see from the report, we estimate that the worst case scenario would end up being 9 HGV trips an hour, so approximately 6.5, so it'll be 1 every 6.5 minutes. So as you'll see from the supplementary report also, we have been liaising with the Highways Authority. They raised no objections, and we're waiting for the final comments on the scheme, but those conditions and the recommendation has been drawn up in consultation with them. So you'll see a construction management traffic plan that's recommended in one of the conditions. We have had some initial information on that, but there's still further comments with regard to that in terms of discussions with Highways. So the condition does still require a final plan to be agreed. And as you see from the report, there is going to be that impact during the construction period, but when we look at the access and the proximity to the A1067 is part of the strategic network in the county and district. So when we look at Highways impacts, it's not to be significant and acceptable in that regard. Obviously, we've considered heritage impacts. There is a Grade 2 star listed church, St Andrew's Church, to the northwest. Given the surrounding screening and distance, the setting and impacts aren't considered to be the impacts on the setting aren't considered to be significant, and that is, and its significance is preserved. Obviously, aspects of our archaeology, you may well have seen the comments in that regard. Just to confirm, discussions been ongoing with the Historic Environment Services, and they're agreeable to an archaeological watching brief on site. So obviously, being a floodplain, it is subject to high levels of flood water during parts of the year, and it does come up. There's a high level of peat within the ground as well. So they've raised no objections subject to conditions, but also kind of considered impacts on minerals. There is a safeguarding area for sand and gravel, which does cut through part of the site. Now, obviously, the proposals don't necessarily, in the long term, and permanently sterilise those. When we've also considered the proposals, and applicants have submitted a minerals and materials management plan, there is an approach there to ensure that the earth and sand in particular will be tested, and then obviously from that there will be, if it's suitable for use within sites, it will be reused. So the proposals are compliant with the policies in the minerals plan also. So yeah, I mean, just in summary, I mean, we've see the proposals there. You know, as I said, the kind of principal objective here, and the reason this is obviously coming forward, is to address water quality issues in the Wensum. An offshoot of that is its mitigation to housing within the district and the county as an offshoot. But when actually officers have looked at the proposals themselves in terms of the planning merits, they do comply with the policies in the local plan. As I said, you know, not only is there mitigation in terms of the impacts on the Wensum, SAC and triple SI, there's going to be enhancements in terms of the immediate on-site habitats, additional aquatic habitats. We'll see that the applicants are proposing enrichment of the grassland within the remainder of the site as well. So there's enhancements from an ecology point of view in that regard. When we look at issues in terms of drainage, archaeology, all those matters, those impacts can be addressed via conditions. Obviously, impacts on amenity, as I said, aren't considered to be significant. And again, there's a construction management plan recommended by the Environmental Health Officer, which will ensure those works are compliant and with concerns and in that regard in terms of amenity. So as you'll see from the report, the application is recommended for approval subject to no objections from Natural England. Obviously, you've had those informal comments we've received yesterday from them to say that they've raised no objections. We await those, and there may be a need to just adjust the conditions if they request certain changes to those. And as you'll see, the recommendation is subject to us completing our appropriate assessment that's required because of potential impacts on the Wensum SAC. Thank you, Chairman.
Before we move on, I may have just missed it in the presentation, but did you highlight the position of the gas pipeline for the members? Did you? Oh, no, I missed it. Oh, no, I know. I can see where it is.
So, use this again. So that is actually the gas pipeline, high-pressure gas pipeline from Breckland to Brisley. So hence the proposals are to kind of keep out of the easement. So the outer lines of the easement from the centre line, the pipe in the middle.
Sorry, that's me. And during the construction phase, will that be highlighted or fenced or anything like that? Yeah, a nod is enough. Thank you. Yeah, and it's probably an obvious question, but as we all get blown to kingdom come, I wish you'd said it at the planning meeting. Okay, thanks very much, Chris. Okay, we've now got a 3 minutes shared between Debbie Sherman and Joshua Pitcher, who are the agents. Okay.
Good morning, members. I just first of all want to thank your officers for their very positive engagement on this scheme, both prior to and following the submission of our application. We've heard this morning, and you'll be acutely aware of the challenges of providing nutrient mitigation has brought to both this district and Norfolk. We understand that our ICW is actually a first in the county that's been specifically designed to mitigate nutrient loads arising from residential development. We take our responsibilities very seriously and want to deliver a mitigation scheme in the most sustainable way, hence this nature-based solution that you see before you today. It will provide substantial ecological and biodiversity enhancements by virtue of biodiversity net gain and carbon capture. Timing is everything, and we are keen to start in March of next year. To do that, clearly we will need to discharge our conditions, but also you'll see reference to water voles, and we need to get a water vole licence from Natural England. The significance of that is the time of year when we can actually carry out those mitigation works is February, and it's only a 6-week period. So therefore, we're hoping that we will be able to make that Natural England application in December in order to facilitate that. But overall, we are hoping that you will be minded to grant planning permission today and allow us to deliver what we hope you will agree is a valuable infrastructure asset both for this district and for Norfolk itself. So myself and my colleague are here to answer any further questions that you might have. But I'm finished. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. It's open to questions from members. I've got Councillor Clark, Councillor Kybird, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to the officers and also to the applicants. Generally, I approve the principle of this application, which is obviously unique in terms of the county and at the planning committee. Only thing I have a concern is in terms of process. We referred to Natural England. I know our officer, Mr. Hobson's given some verbal information. Natural England described 3 areas in which they wanted information, which is outlined in the officer's report. Otherwise, it said they might need to object to the proposal. What I want to establish is if the committee was minded to give approval to the application, and I'm possibly looking at our learned counsel at the end there, Mr. Horn, would we need to have a belt and braces condition that it's subject to Natural England not objecting, as opposed to simply saying that, well, as long as we get a written confirmation of what Natural England may have said in terms of not objecting. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'll just help. Apologies, didn't make that clear. In terms of the information that Natural England requested in their initial comments, that information has been submitted. There's a construction ecological management plan, landscape ecological management plan, materials management plan that have all been submitted, and the comments we received yesterday via email reflect that. They've had time to review those and they raised no objections in principle. As I mentioned, the recommendation is still as set out in the report in terms of receiving those objections. We don't have those in writing, and also those comments in writing may suggest possible and need to amend those conditions we have suggested. So that's why the recommendation is subject to receiving those no objections in writing. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that assurance. It'd just be nice, obviously, to see that in writing, all members in, within the report or as a supplementary. But thank you for that assurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you need to comment, Mike? Or are you okay?
Can I just have a think, please?
Okay. I'll take the next question while you're sorting that out. Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. You quoted a phosphate removal figure of 49 kilograms per year. I have no idea as to how many houses that equates to, just to get a sense of scale for this thing, or is this a pilot project to determine how good wetlands are at removing phosphates?
I'll answer from the agent, if that's all right, Chris.
You're happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the figure you see quoted in the report is 41.39 kilograms. Sometimes people try and equate that to plots. It's a little bit difficult because each site has different phosphate and nitrate mitigation requirements. So to give you an example, we have a site in Dereham, our existing site in Dereham, Westfield Road, is for 100 units, and that requires around 7 kilograms of phosphates per year. So at the moment, our ICW, based on our current water monitoring levels, will mitigate 41 kilograms per year. So, but the problem is each site, because it's different, because it has different site circumstances, it may go up, it may go down. But as a rule, you could, for example, use our Dereham site, which is 7 kilograms for 100 units.
Thank you. Okay,
thank you.
You're fine. Thanks very much. I've got Councillor. Councillor Wilkinson. Yeah, sorry. Did you? Oh, you've done. Yeah, sorry. There was hands going down. Sorry. So, Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Kittle-Morris.
There we go. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just say that it is great to sit here and see a unique green project come forward like this. It's good to see you in the room again, Debbie. Welcome. Yeah, it's just Chris touched on it on the drainage board, and it did say I haven't seen any other supplementary answers. The drainage board said you probably need permissions to divert or alter some of their water courses they are responsible for. And I just wondered if you've conferred with them and working with them and got permissions.
Yeah, so we submitted, first of all, we had extensive pre-app with them before we submitted the application with the IDB. They then recommended that we submit our formal application to put the leaky dam in and works within 9 metres during the planning process. That was completed about second week of October. Their decision or their granting of said permit is expected around week commencing the 15th of December.
Thank you. Councillor Kittle-Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I too welcome this initiative on behalf of the applicant to mitigate the nutrients from quite a lot of development in Breckland. But I draw your attention to the comments from RSPB, who say that the outfall from this project would fall slightly off what is proposed or what the end target for the SAC is, and also the P target. Can I have a comment on that? But I'll just another quick question as well. I note the IDB, and I was a member of the IDB some time ago, and I feel sorry for you moving. I think we had to move Watervols to an hotel while we slubbed out in the River Nar. So, but the other thing is, I'm surprised there isn't a condition in here to maintain the 9 metres either side of the watercourse that goes through, which is an IDB watercourse, and it's one of their bylaws. I know you need permission to work within 9 metres, but to have it maintained in perpetuity after the event, I think is quite important as well for their bylaws. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the first one in terms of the RSPB. Yeah, apologies if I didn't make it clear. We did touch on it, but obviously the RSPB comments do highlight that that's the actual requirement to get the River Wensum up to the required favourable status in terms of the amount of nutrients. Now, as with the whole of the Wensum and the Broads and the affected river catchments, this proposal can't address all those. It's going to be a fact of addressing that through various areas, whether it's land reuse, other improvements to the foul water plants elsewhere in the district. So it's not necessarily feasible or proposed that this do everything. The proposal is that it will create some room to improve. It will improve that, but as I say, it's mitigate schemes elsewhere. As Debbie said, we've already got current schemes, but potential other schemes in the future as well. In terms
About
yeah,
works.
in terms of the maintenance, and again, I mean, there'll be a requirement to do that in perpetuity, you know, in that regard. So, in terms of the question, is it physically works either side to? Yes, they highlight in their comments they'll need two separate consents. As I understand it, the applicants may confirm there'll be the diversion, but yeah, also other works. So as I say, that'll be separate to, that'll be subject to legislation via the IDB, as you know, the IDB. I don't think, as I said, it's our route to duplicate that in any case, because there's a requirement to do that. In any case, there'll be a note on the consent, if granted, that highlights they'll need to go through those separate avenues. I mean, the applicants may want to add some more detail on that.
Yeah. Oh, that one. Do we know what the outfall is? It the Falsham Beck that goes into the Wensum from that feeds into Falsham Beck, and then the Falsham Beck goes into the Wensum. Do we know what the nutrient level is at the outfall of the Falsham Beck into the Wensum?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll hand over to the agent, please.
To start with, the current levels of phosphates, it is in the flood risk assessment. I don't know the level off the top of my head, so I'm not going to quote that to you. With regard to the IDB and maintaining the 9 metres, so during the pre-application process that we went through, pre-submission, the IDB informed us that they only currently maintain the drain from the northern side. So the 9 metres will remain on the northern side. On the southern side, it will be reduced down to 5 metres, but the slope into the basin will create the other 4 metres. They were comfortable with that, and I believe that correspondence is an appendix to the FRA as well.
I'm only concerned, Chairman. The first one we've had before us. I'm just trying to assess what these sort of schemes are going to actually do for the problem we've got with actually building homes in Breckland, and I applaud the initiatives that you've taken to bring this forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I was highlighted initially on this that it is a good news story for a change. We're not trying to build and cover the whole district with concrete. We are actually welcoming this type of scheme coming forward. And the other, I think it's a good news and quite refreshing, is that an integrated low pressure valve suppressor, which is the title I gave it, is a leaky dam. And it's so good to know that it does exactly what it says on the tin, rather than give it something that makes us all scratch our heads. So congratulations for calling a spade a spade. Okay, no further questions, members? Thank you. Okay, so with this item at Geist, 3PL 2023-0849, and it's a full application. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please?
Delegating all conditions.
Delegating all conditions added to that. Thank you. Happy? Delirious.
Delegating all conditions that might be suggested by Natural England or any other body.
Natural England's interference or anyone else. Okay, you're happy with that. We're going to get it sorted. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. That item is approved.
Is that unanimous?
That was unanimous. That was unanimous. Okay, let's put that and that through there. Okay, we're going to jump the list because we have got a speaker on the Thetford application. So we are going to 1 Telford Way, and that's 3PL 2023-0827, full application. We've got Kyle Bell as a speaker, if you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side, sir. And then we've got you there. And after that, we'll move on to Litcham. And we're going to hand over, as soon as everything's ready, to Lucy. Lucy Gaffer, who has been here before, I've been assured. Although she does look all new and clean and just unwrapped, but she is. She's actually been here before, so she's Breckland grubby, or whatever you want to call it.
Is that it? Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So this is 1 Telford Way in Thetford, application reference number 3PL 2023-0827F. So this is a change of use application from B2 light industrial to sui generis to provide a doggy daycare, retail, grooming facility and an outdoor area. This application is being heard at Planning Committee as the site is owned by Breckland Council in the interest of transparency, and I am recommending approval of this application subject to conditions, as the scheme complies with the Breckland Local Plan, MPPF, as well as the Thetford Area Action Plan. So this is the location plan for the application. The site is located within the settlement boundary and a general employment area. The site is accessed to the east along Munford Road. So this is the site and wider context. As you can see, the site sits within an industrial area with many different businesses operating, including the recycling centre, a home improvement business and a caravan dealership. So the applicants are currently operating out of another unit, 20 Telford Way, and seek to move to 1 Telford Way, which is bigger, to increase the number of dogs. So 20 Telford Way is located here where my mouse is. Oh.
Yeah?
Yep.
I'll be your assistant.
So this is the proposed site plan. As you can see, the site includes a car park, doggy daycare and an outside area for the dogs. The doggy daycare is to be located on the ground floor, and the office for the applicants to run the business is located on the first floor. So these are the floor plans for the application. On the ground floor, it is indicated to include a staff room, reception area, storage, and a small retail space for the applicants to sell dog food when a customer comes up to pick their dog. The site is on the ground floor and also facilitates 281.2 square metres of internal space, as well as 323.75 square metres of external space for the dogs to exercise. This space is stated in the statement provided by the applicants and is to accommodate up to 40 dogs, and this has been conditioned as such. And then the first floor space is, as I've already said, for the applicants to run their business. So these are the site photos. Here is the unit seen from Munford Road, and the other units along this, the space. Thank you. And then site photo 2 is a close-up of the space, indicating the size and scale. Here is the parking, or part of the parking indicated for the site. And here is the rear of the site, and where those containers are is where the proposed fencing is to be located for the outside area for the dogs. That one. So with regards to the issues with the application, so it's noted that whilst this application site is not considered an employment use, nor is it Class B use, the proposal will seek to employ 8 people, and the business is already present elsewhere on the industrial estate. Therefore, there's an established principle of this use in that area. The proposed site is not also located in the town centre and is situated within other commercial units consisting of the home improvement service, mobility supplies and the caravan dealership. The proposed change of use would reinvigorate an existing unit within a key settlement that's currently vacant, and would allow for Pooch's Yard to expand their business operations within a larger unit to accommodate more dogs. The site is situated within a prominent location within Thetford as well, with access to the key residential areas which they serve. So also there's the impact of amenity. The commercial units adjoining the site have been consulted on the application and raised no objection regarding the amenity concerns, and the applicant has stated that the maximum number of dogs and customers on site would be a maximum of 40 dogs. And then this would avoid an influx of everyone coming at once. It's also noted that waste disposal is contracted with Biffa Waste Services, which the applicant currently uses, and frequency will be upped to accommodate the more dogs. As part of the application process, the council's environmental health team were consulted and raised no objection. However, comment was raised stating that the information provided to date does not completely address how any potential noise issues will be addressed, and the following condition was to be requested. The development shall not be brought into use until a noise management plan has been submitted to and approved by writing by the local planning authority. The development shall be carried out in accordance with the approved plan thereafter. Considering the site context within the industrial estate and no objection by the environmental health officer, it is considered that the trigger of the proposed condition could be altered to the development should be altered from the development shall not be brought into use until, and change it to within 1 month of the date stated on the decision notice. This has been discussed with environmental health, and they consider this to be acceptable. And then that will allow the applicants to move into the site, commence operation within an acceptable time frame. And then highways is also a consideration. So Norfolk County Highways Department were consulted on the application and initially requested further information regarding the site and whether the unit was a replacement or if the applicants were moving, and as well if drop-off was to be staggered throughout the day. This information was provided by the applicant, and following a reconsultation process, there was it was stated that there was a reasonable explanation for the expansion with regards to the services and facilities offered, as well as adequate parking made possible by staff living in the vicinity to work and car sharing. The pre-booking system was recommended as a condition to the permission. However, this is not enforceable, and as such, the condition has not been attached to this permission. So I'm recommending this change of use application B2 light industrial to sui generis to provide a doggy daycare, retail, grooming facility and an outdoor area to be approved. This complies with the Breckland local plan, MPPF, as well as the Thetford area action plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. We've now got Kyle Bell, please. You are wishing to speak, sir, or just answer questions?
No, I'm happy. I've got a little bit of a speech.
Please do. You've got 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here, especially Lucy. She has had to deal with me badgering her of lots of different questions over this course of time. Obviously, two of the big concerns that have been raised to us and drawn to our attention often was noise, and then the parking situation and the traffic that we could cause to Mumford Road. As we move forward with our business, we experience growth and expansion in our services, resulting in an increase in clientele and subsequently more traffic. However, I would like to emphasise that we are offering a popular collection and drop-off service currently to our clients, and we pick up about 5-6 dogs a day, so that reduces the amount of traffic that comes to us. We'll also be implementing a drop-off and collection rota, so we'll have 4-5 customers arriving within a 15-minute time window and having a 5-minute grace period in between, obviously, for traffic to move, so there's no overlapping, no influx of people building up, again, to reduce the traffic coming to our site. And we've already spoke to our customers about this, and there's no objections, no concerns on their side. We get to know our clients quite well, so we can work a rota quite simply based on what they need. There's a massive misconception to doggy daycare and the noise that comes from doggy daycares, unfortunately. Whether that's bad daycares around, I'm not sure. I train all of my staff to a very high standard. Dogs bark for a reason. They don't bark for no reason. They bark whether they're usually overexcitement or they're distressed. Now, running the doggy daycare, the idea is we're in the medium of that. We don't want dogs to get overexcited because that will cause behavioural problems, and we don't want dogs in distress because it's not fair on the dog, and the welfare is our forefront of everything we do. So our staff are trained to deal with negative behaviours with positive reinforcement, and that can then correct any behaviours. And likewise, we are not there, sounds so silly saying it out loud, but it's true, we're not there to make a living and loads of money. We're there for the welfare of the dogs. If the dog's distressed and barking all day, we don't want to hear it. The dog's not going to enjoy it. We'd rather send the dog home. That's more important. We really want to move into One Telford Way. It's a fantastic unit. Looked at it many times. And since COVID-19, there's been a massive influx of dogs, good and bad. And we need to expand our services. We're outgrowing where we are, and we need to offer more to the community. Rather than these dogs being left at home, behavioural problems at home, etc., has already been on the increase. Statistics show there's more dog attacks, more dog bites happening because dogs aren't being socialised correctly. I am a Thetford native myself, and there is next to no job opportunities as well regarding dog or animal work. That's not just in Thetford, Norfolk, Breckland, that's across the UK. We already employ a few people. We've got a fantastic team. We want to expand and offer more jobs so people can get into this industry, which is a thriving industry. We opened up in 2017. We've won numerous awards, and we're currently, on Wednesday next week, going to the Kennel Club headquarters to potentially win one of the best doggy daycares in the UK. Having Breckland Council on our side shows that Breckland Council want these industries to develop and businesses to develop, offering more jobs and more opportunity. So I really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you very much.
No, you're all right. It's fine. No, that's a very good presentation, actually, and made me mindful of probably establishing a councillor daycare. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the presentation of the officer and the applicant. Can I just ask Lucy to confirm, has the noise management plan been submitted yet?
So this hasn't been submitted yet. Part of the conditions on the application is that the applicant has 1 month from the date of decision to complete this, as we felt that was environmental health, and the planning team felt that was a suitable amount of time for this part of the application.
Any other further questions? No, you're all happy. Okay, good. With this item then, at Thetford, 1 Telford Way, 3PL 2023-0827 in full format. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's approved. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. We now move to a double at Litcham. We've got Matthew in the chair to do this one, and that's 3PL 2022-0340 and 3PL 2022-0371, both at Litcham, one at Wellingham Road and one at Weasnham Road. All will become clear.
All right, so We've got 2 planning applications here, and I'm going to be presenting them as one presentation, but there will be 2 separate votes for the applications. So the 2 planning applications are situated within the parish of Litcham, and they are both reserved matters applications. The reasons why they've both been brought to planning committee is due to the applicant is Breckland Bridge, and Breckland Council has an interest in the land. So for transparency reasons, they're brought to planning committee. I just want to note that both reserved matters were brought to July 2023's planning committee, and they were both recommended for approval. However, since that committee, there has been some design changes, and that is why it's been brought back to planning committee. And just to provide a final update, that since July 2023, we have also received an updated GI RAMs and the required monitoring and administration fees. So therefore, we won't be seeking to delegate those matters. However, the S106 variation agreement is still ongoing, and so we will be seeking to delegate that matter back to officers. Before we start the presentation, I just want to note that we are just focusing on the design and amenity changes, and there has been changes to the house types, and other matters were sought for approval at July 2023's plan committee. So the first application we are going to start with is 3PL 2023-0371/D, and this is land of Weasenham Road, and then this is for reserve matters for the erection of 8 dwellings following outline planning permission back and then also for the discharge of obligation as part of the S106 agreement as part of the outline planning application. So this is Weasenham Road here, and the dwellings will be situated within the red line itself. And then this is the site and the wider context. So the red line just shows the overall site. And then this is the existing site plan. So as you can see, you've got residential dwellings situated at that front upon Weasenham Road. So this is the proposed site plan. So you've got plot 1 and 2 here, which are semi-detached bungalows, and then you've got plots 3 to 4, which are going to be 2-storey detached properties, and then plots 5 to 6 and 7 to 8 will have semi-detached garages. So So I'm going to show you a slide with the approved design of each house type at July's planning committee, and then I'll then show you the revised changes. So this is house type 5. This is a 3-bedroom, and this is the one that was approved at in July. And then this is the proposed 3-bedroom one that they're seeking approval for. So this is the approved 2-bed for house type 6 that was approved in July of this year. And then this is the proposed house type 6 that they're now seeking approval for. And then this is just an example of house type 9. So this is the bungalow that was approved in July. And now this is house type 9, and so this is what they're now seeking approval for. And then this is just a street scene just to demonstrate how it will sit within the existing built and natural environment. And then it's just some site photos. So this is the access going into the site. This is looking onto Wellingham Road, which we'll come to, and the dwellings there. This is looking out into the onto Weasenham Road. And then this is just an example of the type of built environment that exists on Weasenham Road already. So the next one is 3PL 2022/0340/D, and this is for Wellingham Road. And then again, this is reserved matters for the erection of 8 dwellings following outline planning permission, and also to discharge obligation for as part of the S106 agreement for the outline permission. So this is the location plan. So this time it's situated here. And this is the site and wider context. This is the existing site plan. And this is the proposed site plans. As you can see, you've got, they're all semi-detached. And you've got plots 1 and 2 here, and then 3 to 8 are situated here. Okay, so this is house type 1. This was approved in July. And then this is the revised house type 1, and this is the one that's seeking approval. And then this is house type 6, which I have already shown, but again, this is seeking this was approved in July 2023 as part of this reserve matters. And then this is the one that is seeking approval as part of the changes. And then just some site photos. So this is looking down onto Wellingham Road. As you can see, the existing built environment. And again, sort of looking along Wellingham Road again. This is the existing access into the site. And then just as you come around the corner, that's the existing access. So I can confirm that the application has been recommended for approval for both reserve matters. We are satisfied that the proposed changes do not cause any detrimental impact on appearance, character, and also amenity provisions. And then furthermore, we are satisfied with the GIRAMs that has been submitted as part of the application. So therefore, we don't seek to delegate that to officers. And just to finally note that we will be seeking continuation of the ongoing matters relating to the S106 agreement and the variation. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. It's open to questions from members. No one wishing to ask anything, all fairly straightforward. Thanks very much. I need 2 votes on this, please, members. So on item 9D at Litcham, 3PL 2022, 0340, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And then on 9E, 3PL 2022 0371D, Litcham, again, this one's a Weazenham Road. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to now move on to item 12 on your agenda, which is applications determined by the Deputy Chief Executive. Those are there for your information. And then item 13, appeal summary, and again, those are there for your information. And with that, I will close this meeting for today, unless anyone has anything they wish to raise. And there is lunch provided, although you're a little bit early, but I think you're